Disclaimer: it's inspired by reality, shaped by imagination.
What happens when Rowan Atkinson, the famously private comedian known for his silent wit as Mr. Bean, steps into The View, a show built on loud opinions and sharper tongues, to talk about technology and aging? It began as a polite, almost academic discussion on whether seniors should be taught digital skills for free, but within minutes, the tone shifted. Joy Behar, armed with her usual sarcasm, questioned whether taxpayers should foot the bill for people who refuse to keep up. Rowan, calm but visibly tense, countered that technology was never built with older generations in mind, and that helping them was a duty, not a favor. What followed was one of the strangest and most unexpected clashes in The View's history. The man who made millions laugh without saying a word suddenly found his voice and used it to call out what he saw as arrogance and generational blindness. As the exchange grew heated, the audience leaned in, sensing that something rare was unfolding. And when Rowan finally stood up, adjusted his jacket, and quietly walked off the set, the silence that followed spoke louder than any punchline he had ever delivered. Millions would soon debate it online. Had The View gone too far, or had Rowan simply reached his breaking point?
The segment started innocently enough. Whoopi Goldberg opened the show with her usual warmth, introducing the topic. Today we're talking about technology, aging, and whether seniors deserve free digital education. Should the government fund it, or should people just figure it out themselves? The audience applauded politely, the cameras panned across the table, and Rowan Atkinson smiled his subtle, almost awkward smile. He wasn't there to entertain, he was there to make a point. Whoopi turned to him first. Rowan, you've spoken before about the gap between generations. Why does this issue matter to you? Rowan clasped his hands, his voice calm but firm. Because I've seen brilliant minds, teachers, war veterans, community leaders, reduced to frustration over something as trivial as logging into an account. The world changed faster than they did, and instead of helping them catch up, we mock them for it. I think that's deeply unfair. The crowd nodded, a low murmur of agreement spreading through the studio. Joy Behar leaned forward, smirking. But Rowan, isn't that just life? Every generation has to adapt. No one taught us how to use microwaves or fax machines for free. Why should this be any different? Rowan's eyebrows rose slightly. Because the digital world isn't a convenience anymore. It's survival. You can't access healthcare, pay your bills, or even talk to your grandkids without understanding it. It's not about convenience. It's about connection. That line landed hard. The audience clapped again, but Joy wasn't done. So you're saying the government should just pay for everyone's computer classes, free lessons for grandma to learn Instagram? Rowan tilted his head, his expression deadpan but cutting. If it helps her stay in touch with her family and not feel forgotten, yes, I'd call that money well spent, wouldn't you? The audience laughed, some out of humor, others in surprise. Whoopi tried to keep things balanced, asking Anna Navarro to weigh in. Anna agreed with Rowan, saying her own mother struggled with online appointments and digital forms. Rowan nodded appreciatively. Exactly. It's not just about being trendy. It's about giving dignity to those who built the world we now manage through screens. Joy interjected, shaking her head. I get that, but Rowan, where does it stop? Everyone wants something for free. What about personal responsibility? Shouldn't people take the initiative instead of waiting for someone to hold their hand? The tension started to build. Rowan paused, then replied softly. You're assuming they've been given the same chances. My mother used a typewriter for 40 years. When computers came along, there was no one to help her transition. She didn't fail to adapt. Society failed to teach. The studio went quiet for a moment. It wasn't a rehearsed line, it came from a real place. Joy gave a light laugh to ease the silence. Come on, Rowan, your mom could have gone to a library. They have classes. People just don't try anymore. This time, Rowan didn't smile. His tone sharpened slightly. It's easy to say that when you're not the one struggling to understand something that's replaced every part of your daily life. Whoopi leaned in, sensing the growing friction. So what's the solution then, Rowan? He exhaled, steady but resolute. We spend billions on technology, but pennies on teaching people to use it. If we can build systems smart enough to think, we can certainly make room for compassion." The audience clapped again, louder this time. Joy shifted in her chair, glancing toward the crowd. "Well, I don't know about you, but I'd rather see that money go to health care or schools for kids. Old folks had their time." Rowan looked directly at her, eyes narrowed just slightly. "And without them, Joy, none of us would have our time." That line landed like a quiet thunderclap. Whoopi quickly broke the silence. Okay, we'll come back after the break and hear more from both sides." As the cameras faded to commercial, Rowan leaned back in his chair, expression unreadable. He wasn't angry, yet, but something in the exchange had shifted. The debate that began as polite disagreement was now smoldering beneath the surface. By the next segment, that spark was about to catch fire.
When the cameras came back from commercial, the tone on set had changed. The smiles were tighter, the laughter forced. The View's producers clearly sensed the tension, too. They cut to Joy right away, giving her the first word. "So, we're back, and we're talking about whether seniors deserve free digital training. Rowan Atkinson thinks it's a moral duty. I think it's a handout. Let's get into it." The audience chuckled, but the undercurrent was uneasy. Rowan shifted slightly, folding his hands. "It's not about handouts, Joy. It's about respect. We've created a society that depends on technology, and then we punish people for not understanding it. That's not progress. It's cruelty disguised as efficiency." Joy leaned forward, her tone sharp. "Cruelty? Really? No one's punishing anybody. They can go to YouTube, watch tutorials like everyone else." Rowan raised an eyebrow. "You assume everyone has access or knows how to search for that help. That's precisely the problem." Ana Navarro jumped in, trying to mediate. "Joy, come on. My mom still doesn't know how to use her iPad. She's terrified of pressing the wrong button. There's real fear there." Joy shot back. "Then maybe your mom should stop being afraid of the iPad and just learn. Fear isn't an excuse to stay in the Stone Age." The crowd reacted, a mix of laughs and gasps. Whoopi cracked a faint grin. "He's got you there, Joy." Joy shrugged, pretending not to care. "Fine, but you can't expect the government to babysit everyone who's late to the party. What's next? Free TikTok lessons?" Rowan paused for a moment, looking down before meeting her gaze again. "No, Joy. I expect compassion. It's not about TikTok. It's about letting people stay connected to their world before it forgets them entirely." The room quieted. Then Sunny Hostin jumped in. "Rowan's right. A lot of seniors are isolated. They can't use apps for food delivery, video calls, even telemedicine. It's not just about fun, it's survival." Joy exhaled loudly. "I get that, but we can't hold everyone's hand forever. My mother figured out her TV remote, didn't need a government program to do it." Rowan tilted his head, his voice now lower. "That's commendable, but it's not the same, is it? A remote doesn't demand your personal data, trick you into subscriptions, or lock you out with passwords you can't remember. Technology today punishes confusion." The crowd murmured in agreement. Rowan continued, his tone deepening. "You can't tell people to just learn when the world changes every 6 months. New updates, new interfaces, new rules. If it were easy, Joy, half this room wouldn't have teenagers helping them log in." Even Whoopi cracked a faint grin at that. "He's not wrong there." Joy crossed her arms. "Okay, but who's paying for it, Rowan? Me? You? The taxpayers? Where does the money come from to teach Grandma how to use FaceTime?" Rowan looked at her steadily. "From the same place we fund libraries, healthcare, and infrastructure. Because connection is infrastructure. It's part of living in a civilized society." A ripple of applause followed, louder this time. Joy's expression hardened slightly. "You sound like you want to turn compassion into policy." Rowan didn't flinch. Perhaps compassion should be policy. That line landed like a quiet thunderclap. Joy tried to joke her way out of it. "All right, St. Rowan, savior of the elderly. What's next? Free smartphones for everyone over 60? Rowan leaned back, his tone suddenly clipped. "If it keeps them from being scammed, ignored, or left behind? Yes, absolutely." That surprised even the panel. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Joy looked visibly irritated now. "Oh, come on. That's unrealistic and you know it." Whoopi, sensing the rising tension, tried to move the discussion forward. Okay, let's stay on track. Rowan, you said technology isolates seniors. Joy, you're saying it empowers them. Is there a middle ground? Rowan responded first. There could be, if people stopped treating empathy like an optional feature. Joy smiled thinly. And maybe if people stopped expecting the world to slow down for them. The words hung in the air like static. Rowan sat back, his eyes briefly lowering to the table. When he spoke again, his voice was soft, but the weight behind it was unmistakable. The world didn't slow down, Joy. It just forgot to bring everyone along. That line drew gasps. Joy didn't respond right away. Whoopi gave a cautious smile to the camera. All right, folks, I think we're heating up here. When we come back, we'll talk about the role of family. Should younger generations be stepping up more instead of the government? Stay tuned. As the red light dimmed and the commercial music kicked in, Rowan's eyes stayed fixed on Joy. He wasn't angry, just profoundly disappointed, and everyone on set could feel it. What started as a debate about funding had turned into something much deeper, a question about who we've become as a society. The next segment would push it even further. When they came back, the emotions wouldn't just heat up, they'd ignite.
When the cameras came back, there was a noticeable change in energy. The audience had sensed the growing rift, and now everyone was leaning forward, waiting to see where it would go. Whoopi Goldberg, ever the steady hand, took a deep breath and smiled toward the camera. Welcome back. We've been talking about whether seniors should be taught digital skills for free. Rowan Atkinson says it's a matter of compassion. Joy Behar says it's about personal responsibility. So, where do we go from here? Rowan looked calm, but there was something quietly simmering beneath his composed expression. He clasped his hands together, choosing his words carefully. We go, he said softly, toward a world that remembers the people who built it, the people who wrote the letters, fixed the cars, raised the children, and now find themselves shut out by screens they never asked for. The audience broke into applause. It wasn't thunderous, but it was heartfelt. Joy smirked, leaning in. That's poetic, Rowan, but let's not romanticize the past. The world moves forward. My grandmother didn't have a smartphone, and she managed just fine. Rowan turned to her. Yes, because she lived in a world that still spoke her language. Today, everything, from banking to healthcare, demands digital fluency. We've made survival a subscription service. A few people in the audience clapped. Others murmured. Sonny Hostin nodded. That's actually a fair point. My father got locked out of his medical portal last week and couldn't refill his prescription because he didn't remember his password. It's not about laziness, it's about design. Joy rolled her eyes. Fine, but where does it end? Free digital lessons today? What tomorrow? Free chauffeurs because someone's too old to drive? Rowan's face softened, not angry, but sad. Joy, it's not about entitlement. It's about empathy. We already provide ramps for people who can't walk upstairs. Why can't we offer bridges for those who can't cross into the digital world? The studio went still again. Whoopi smiled faintly. That's a good line, Rowan. Bridges, not barriers. Joy sighed audibly. You make it sound like we're villains for expecting people to adapt. But maybe, and I mean this respectfully, maybe older people don't want to adapt. Maybe they just want the world to stay comfortable for them. That struck a nerve. Rowan's lips parted slightly, his eyes fixed on her. He took a long pause before speaking. Comfortable? Joy, you think it's comfortable to be left behind? To have your children text you instead of visit? To be told your handwriting is obsolete? Your voice replaced by an algorithm? Your life reduced to a login? His tone wasn't raised, but it carried weight. The air in the room thickened. Joy blinked, uncharacteristically silent for a moment. That's a bit dramatic, don't you think? She finally said. Rowan smiled sadly. I make my living on drama, Joy, but this isn't acting. This is happening. The audience applauded, some even standing. Ana Navarro jumped in, trying to steady the moment.
I think what Rowan's saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that when you strip away the emotional layer, what we're really debating is dignity. Rowan nodded. Exactly. Technology should serve people, not shame them. And yet we've built a world where people in their 70s have to ask their grandkids for permission to exist online. The crowd murmured in agreement again. Joy, feeling the energy slipping away, straightened up and went on the offensive. But don't you think that's a bit patronizing, Rowan? Seniors aren't helpless. My neighbor is 82 and runs an online book club. Maybe instead of painting them as victims, we give them some credit. Rowan's gaze softened. Of course they're capable, Joy, but capability doesn't erase responsibility. We can't use a few success stories to justify ignoring millions who are struggling. He paused, then leaned in just slightly. You know, I once helped my own mother video call her doctor. It took us nearly 40 minutes to set up the app because every screen asked for a new password, a code, a permission. And when we finally connected, she cried, not because she couldn't learn, but because the world stopped meeting her halfway. The room went quiet again. Even Joy hesitated. Whoopi's voice lowered. That's powerful, Rowan. Rowan nodded. It broke my heart. Not because she couldn't learn, but because the world stopped meeting her halfway. Joy cleared her throat. That's touching, but one emotional story doesn't mean we overhaul the entire system. Rowan gave her a long look, then spoke softly. You're right, it doesn't. But if compassion only counts when it's profitable, then maybe we need to overhaul more than just the system. The audience erupted in applause again. Joy tried to talk over it, but the cheers drowned her out. Whoopi smiled to the crowd. All right, let's take a breath. Rowan, you've made your case for compassion. Joy, you've made yours for practicality. But I think what everyone's feeling right now is, maybe it's not either or. Joy looked unconvinced. I'm all for compassion, Whoopi, but if we keep cushioning everyone, no one learns resilience. Rowan turned to her with a quiet intensity. Resilience doesn't mean neglect. You don't toughen people by turning your back on them. The crowd applauded once more, and Joy threw up her hands. Oh, please, now I'm the villain again. Rowan smiled faintly. Not a villain, Joy. Just a reminder that impassion isn't weakness, it's wisdom. That line hung in the air like the echo of a bell. Even Joy couldn't find a comeback. She just stared at him, blinking slowly. The audience was fully on his side now, clapping louder, a few people even shouting, "That's right!" The tension didn't fade when the cameras cut for a break. In fact, it deepened. Rowan stayed silent, staring down at his cup of tea. Joy muttered something under her breath that didn't make it to the mics. The stage crew moved quietly, sensing something was unraveling. Not just a conversation, but a moment of principle. When they came back, the atmosphere would shift again. The debate had gone from polite to pointed, from reasoned to raw. And in the next few minutes, it would reach its breaking point, the one where words wouldn't be enough.
The studio was silent. Even the usual chatter from the production crew had died down. The audience, who'd been laughing minutes earlier, now watched as tension rippled through the View's stage. Joy Behar leaned forward, her smile long gone. So let me get this straight, she said slowly, her voice sharp. You think seniors deserve free lessons funded by taxpayers to use the internet and phones? What's next, Rowan? Free smartphones? Free Netflix too? Rowan Atkinson's expression barely shifted. He didn't raise his voice, didn't fidget. That stillness was somehow louder than shouting. Joy, he said calmly, I'm not asking for free entertainment. I'm asking for dignity. There's a difference. That line struck deep. You could hear someone in the audience whisper, he's right. Joy scoffed. Dignity isn't a government handout. My mother learned to use her phone by herself at 82. You can't keep babying people because they're older. Rowan's eyes flicked toward her, and for the first time, a trace of irritation cracked through his composure. Your mother was fortunate, Joy. Not everyone has that support or patience. Some seniors are alone. They're not asking for sympathy, they're asking for inclusion.
Sunny Hostin jumped in, sensing the rising heat. Rowan, what about responsibility? Shouldn't people try to adapt on their own? There are libraries, tutorials. He cut her off, gently but firmly. You're assuming they know where to begin. Many don't. You hand them a tablet and it feels like a spaceship, and every time they try to learn, they're told, "Oh, you wouldn't understand." That's not encouragement. That's exclusion dressed up as progress. The crowd murmured again, this time louder. Joy crossed her arms. You're acting like technology is the villain here. It's just evolution. People evolve or get left behind. It's always been that way. Rowan took a slow breath. Evolution doesn't mean abandonment. It means lifting each other up. We didn't leave people behind when we invented cars. We taught them to drive. That line earned a wave of applause. But Joy didn't back down. She leaned closer, eyes narrowing. You're a comedian, Rowan. You make people laugh. Maybe stick to that instead of lecturing America about tech policy. A sharp gasp ran through the room. Rowan blinked, visibly taken aback. His lips pressed together, and he looked down briefly before meeting her gaze again. You know, Joy, he said softly, it's ironic. You host a show about opinions, but you seem to think mine don't count if I don't fit your lane. The tension was electric. Even Whoopi Goldberg, usually the mediator, looked uneasy. All right, she said, trying to cool things down, let's all take a breath. But Rowan wasn't finished. I've spent years observing people, how we communicate, how we misunderstand each other. And what I see now is a world too quick to dismiss anyone who doesn't fluently speak its latest language. Joy smirked. Or maybe it's a world tired of excuses. That did it. Rowan's composure cracked. He leaned in, voice low but resonant. Excuses? Try being 75 and needing to schedule a doctor's appointment online because the phone line was removed. Try feeling invisible because society decided your struggle isn't trendy enough. The applause erupted, loud, passionate, unfiltered. Joy's face tightened. You're twisting this into a sob story, Rowan. He shook his head. No, Joy. I'm describing reality. And if compassion sounds like a sob story to you, maybe that's the real problem. The room went completely still. For a long beat, no one spoke. Then Joy gave a strained smile and said, All right, Mr. Bean, we've heard your sermon. The audience groaned. Some booed softly. Rowan stood slowly, smoothing his jacket. Thank you for proving my point, he said quietly. Mocking the message because you don't like the messenger. He turned to the audience and gave a small, courteous nod. That's all I needed to say. And then, without looking back, Rowan Atkinson walked off the set. The cameras didn't cut. The audience sat in stunned silence. Whoopi called for a commercial, but even she looked shaken. It wasn't just a walk-off. It was a statement. A man known for silence just said everything that needed to be heard.
The studio lights dimmed slightly as the view cut to commercial, but no one moved. The audience sat frozen, whispering among themselves. Joy Behar standed at her notes, pretending to read, but her face betrayed the tension. You could almost hear the echo of Rowan Atkinson's quiet words. Mocking the message because you don't like the messenger. When the show returned from break, Whoopi Goldberg took a steadying breath and looked straight into the camera. All right, she said slowly. For those just tuning in, Rowan Atkinson has left the stage after what turned into a heated discussion about seniors and technology. Her voice softened. Let's take a second to unpack that. Joy tried to laugh it off. He was getting a bit dramatic, don't you think? She said, glancing toward the audience for reassurance. But there wasn't much laughter this time. A few people crossed their arms. Others just shook their heads. Sunny Hostin, still visibly unsettled, leaned forward. I don't think it was drama, Joy. I think he was trying to say something we don't like to admit, that for many seniors, technology feels like a locked door, and when we joke about it, we make them feel smaller. The comment landed hard. Joy gave a half shrug but didn't respond. Meanwhile, social media was already on fire. Clips of Rowan walking off were being replayed, captioned, Rowan Atkinson's quiet rebellion on The View. Comments flooded in. He didn't lose his temper. He made his point and left,
respect. Finally, someone standing up for older people who feel left behind. Joy was way out of line. This wasn't about politics, it was about humanity. As the conversation carried on, Whoopi tried to steer things back to reflection. You know, I've got older relatives who struggle with all this new stuff. Apps, passwords, digital banking. It's not as simple as people think, and not everyone has someone patient enough to help them. Joy finally sighed. Look, I didn't mean to sound heartless, she admitted, but it's just every time there's a problem, people expect someone else to fix it. Maybe I got too defensive. The audience murmured again, this time not in anger, but understanding. Sonny nodded gently. That's fair, but what Rowan was saying wasn't about blame, it was about access. Teaching digital skills for free isn't charity, it's giving people the tools to stay connected. Seniors shouldn't have to choose between isolation and confusion. For the rest of the segment, Joy stayed quiet. When the show wrapped, she offered a short closing remark, softer than usual. If Rowan's watching, I hope he knows I didn't mean to disrespect him. He made some good points. Maybe I needed to hear them. But the real impact wasn't in the studio. It was outside. That afternoon, clips of the exchange trended across platforms. News outlets picked it up. Headlines read, Rowan Atkinson walks out of The View after passionate plea for seniors. Comedian turns advocate. Atkinson's viral moment on digital inclusion. Within hours, advocacy groups began citing his words. A nonprofit for elderly digital education tweeted, when Rowan said, evolution doesn't mean abandonment, he summed up our mission better than we ever could. Even late-night hosts commented. Some joked, sure, but most praised him for using his platform to highlight something overlooked. By the next morning, a quiet ripple had started. A few tech companies publicly announced free beginner workshops for older adults. Local libraries saw sign-ups for computer literacy programs spike. A few city councils even discussed expanding senior learning initiatives. And somewhere in a small cafe in London, Rowan Atkinson was reportedly sitting with a cup of tea reading the headlines on his phone. He smiled faintly, then set it aside. When a journalist later asked if he regretted walking off, he simply said, no. Sometimes silence is the loudest answer. Back on The View, Joy mentioned him again a week later. You know, Rowan's moment got people talking. I still think we need balance, but maybe he was right about one thing. Evolution should never mean abandonment. That line got applause. Not thunderous, but honest. And for millions who'd watched that viral clip, people who'd felt too old, too lost, or too embarrassed to ask for help, it meant something deeper. Rowan Atkinson hadn't stormed out in anger. He'd walked out in principle. And his quiet exit did what no lecture could. It reminded people that kindness isn't outdated. It's timeless. If you like this powerful moment, make sure to subscribe for more celebrity clashes, emotional showdowns, and unforgettable TV moments. Drop a comment below. Do you think seniors deserve free digital education?